Hi, classmates. This research project that I've taken on is called what I call the perceived effect of prison inmate activity. The perceived effect of prison inmate activity. My research question is what kinds of activities keep prison inmates well behaved and out of trouble? And why did I ask that question? Well, activities that are usually deemed good and responsible ones amongst inmates are usually also ones that are going to keep them from misbehaving in ways that could get them in trouble, whether those misbehaviors cause them to be written up for disciplinary reports or infractions, or worse, further things like drug addiction or violence. So I was really interested in solutions to mass incarceration. And one of the things that was solvent to me was good behavior, because the more inmates that behave well, the more likely they are to be released and to not return to prison. And thus, that's one of the solutions to decreasing this problem of mass incarceration is just plain old good behavior of the inmates. So what really are these things that are just good behaviors? Well, this is my hypothesis. Literary activities, such as reading and writing, are common for maintaining good behaviors while behind bars. Um, I settled on this hypothesis because, there's some things to do behind bars, but activities are usually limited. There's things such as physical exercise, um, you know, jailhouse, prison house cooking, right, which is a very limited activity. Some socializing, right, playing cards, chess, checkers, things like that. Um, but it seemed that the common theme was literary activities, because even inmates in secure locked environments like the SHU and things that we sort of colloquially know it here in California, like in Pelican Bay, those kinds of inmates, as well as the ones in very very minimum security facilities, they usually always have access to literature, right? Ways and means of reading and writing. So that I found it to be a very common activity, in addition to literacy being something that we practice here in education and even in higher education. The highest levels of education that you can go usually incorporate literacy. So I thought it was very interesting that, well, highly educated people in educational institutions practice literacy, and prison inmates have that, really almost always have the opportunity to practice literacy. So I sort of settled on literacy as an activity that I knew, um, that I hypothesized would cause good behavior amongst inmates that practiced it, because really because we practice it here in higher education. So that's because we do it here, and this is a successful system. Um, then it too should be a success for inmates, as well as keeping them in terms of keeping them well behaved. So that's why I settled on this hypothesis right here. So the evidence. So during the course of our survey, 428 people responded to this question. This was question number 64 in the survey. And this is in regards to level of survey respondent satisfaction and criminal justice system reintegration of former inmates. So this question pertains to people's levels of satisfaction of former inmates being reintroduced into society, and their performance in the sort of early stages of reintroduction into society. And most people were unsatisfied. You can see right here, I've got it circled in red. Um, Unsatisfied is the most common answer. 186 people answered unsatisfied out of 428. And then 119 were totally unsatisfied, right? And then third up from that is neutral, 104 people. So we can see here that most people are either, unsatisfied or totally unsatisfied with the way that former inmates are exiting um, the prison system and the jail systems. Okay, so next year, the same 428. So thankfully, the same number of people that responded to question number 64 on the survey also responded to question number 72, which was my question, and this one was in regards to which prison inmate activities do they believe was most conducive of good inmate behavior. So we've got four options here. Um, Reading and literacy, you can see that right there. Watching television, physical exercise, and self-initiated learning projects. So I'll explain these briefly. Reading and practicing literacy are basically reading and then practicing literacy as in writing. So reading and writing. You can see watching television right there, which is just plain staring at a screen. We've got physical exercise, which is, push-ups, jumping jacks, pull-ups, things like that, lifting weights. And then we've got self-initiated learning projects. Now, the definition for a self-initiated learning project is basically any sort of project that one takes on to teach themselves something new that encompasses at least 7 hours or more of their time. And it's quite common for self-initiated learning projects to incorporate some level of literacy, whether it's learning something by using a dictionary or an encyclopedia, or even reading a magazine about sewing or knitting to learn how to actually sew and knit. So it's common for that, for reading literacy to sort of bleed on over into self-initiated learning projects. And you can see here that most people settle on the self-initiated learning project as the activity that they believe would be most conducive toward good inmate activity. And in the second, the runner-up there, fairly close by, is reading and practicing literacy. Now, this is really interesting for me to see. Now, I sort of understand self-initiated learning projects as something that can be accelerated or even advanced reading and practicing literacy. Um, because there's more that can be done with it. It seems as more of an active process of reading and practicing literacy. For instance, if I've seen this in San Quentin where they have financial personal finance classes and things like that, and they have an inmate that actually teaches that class. So of course, from what I understand, the inmate had to go through a number of reading and practicing literacy, self-initiated learning type projects to learn the economic sense and the financial management sense to actually teach the class. So that's one example of somebody that's sort of incorporated both reading and practicing literacy and a self-initiated learning project to some extent um, to grow and develop. And of course, his behavior is very astute in prison. So that's just one example of that. Let's move on here. Okay, so the follow-up question to that one previous with the bar graph is whether or not the respondents believed that their answer selection was actually conducive toward a reduction of recidivism amongst those inmates after they had left prison. And most people, you can see I've got it circled here in red, most people agreed that it is, which means that self-initiated learning projects and literacy and reading while in prison as an activity actually is conducive of reducing recidivism, which means that it's conducive of causing people to not return to prison, which is what we want. So findings, you can see this here. Most respondents were not satisfied with the criminal justice system's reintegration. And then my hypothesis here that self-initiated, that literacy would be the most common good behavior, was a runner-up, but very close because it's in line with self-initiated learning projects. And then you can also see that most respondents believe that their answer selection was actually conducive of reductions in recidivism and implications. So we can see what this means here. Most people are not satisfied with the current state of the criminal justice system, but if more inmates are engaging in literary activities and especially self-initiated learning projects, which could still be literary activities, but just more highly valued and meaningful literary activities. So you just increase the value and the meaning of that, and then it becomes more of a learning type project. Those kinds of things really have good potential for decreasing inmate infractions, recidivism, and the overall prison population, and thus contributing to an end to this mass incarceration as we know it. Thank you.